Okay, so this is my third video response to Freddie's Modern Kung Fu, where he says, "Where are the women martial arts masters?" Now, I'm going to break this up into several videos because the answer is quite a big one. And it requires a lot of thought because we've got decades, hundreds of years of culture to fight against, basically, in order for there to be women martial arts masters. Okay, so this one is about the teacher because essentially it starts with the teacher. The teacher is the one who is responsible for creating a culture and the atmosphere in his martial arts lessons. And so if you as a teacher want women to succeed, or if you want teachers to be good at encouraging women to succeed, you need to talk to them about this. And so it starts with the teacher. Okay, first thing is that I'm going to talk about male teachers particularly to start with. I will do a little bit about women teachers, but because they're almost universally male, I'm going to talk mostly about male teachers. Now, first thing is that male teachers really do need to be able to deal on a personal level with the fact that women might actually do well, and they might be as good as them. They might even be better than them. A lot of the time men find it very difficult to deal with it when women are better than them at anything, really. We've got millennia of patriarchy where it's always been assumed that men are better than women at pretty much everything, and a lot of that's been eroded over the last sort of century or so. But we've still got this last bastion of men being bigger and stronger physically than women, and obviously that feeds through into martial arts. So if a man sees a woman being better than them at martial arts, they're not going to like it. They're going to feel threatened. Now, I think the thing that you really need to think about here is that martial arts is actually a great leveller in sporting terms. You think about elite sports people. If you're doing a specific type of sport, you kind of need a particular body shape to be really world class. So just in running, for example, if you're a sprinter, you need a lot of muscle, you need a lot of bulk to power you quickly over that short 100 metres. But if you're a long distance runner, you don't want all that bulk because that's just a lot to carry around for a long distance. So long distance runners tend to be smaller, have less muscle. But with martial arts, it's different. You can be tall, you can be short, you can be average, you can be thin, you can be fat. Does not matter. What matters, the only thing that you really need to do well in martial arts is to work hard at it. That's really all you need. And if you're prepared to work hard, you'll gain the skills. That's really all you need. Obviously, you will get some people who are naturally better than others. But it's actually a lot easier for any type of person, male, female, short, tall, thin, fat, to do well in martial arts. Muscle, no muscle, doesn't really matter. What matters is the skill and the work. That's what matters. Working hard, that's all you need to do. So, we kind of really, a lot of people, that's the thing that a teacher needs to understand, and it's the thing a teacher needs to get across to her students. And the other thing a teacher needs to do is, be prepared to promote the women students. And I don't just mean giving them a black belt, I mean making them really visible. Make them visible on their website. If they have a Facebook page, sharing them women on their Facebook page. And a lot of teachers, they'll do Kung Fu and Tai Chi, or Karate and Tai Chi and yoga, or something like that. And, if you're prepared to, share a woman doing a video of herself doing yoga, maybe you should also be prepared to share women doing videos of themselves doing Kung Fu or Karate, or, those other ones, because it's very hard for anyone to succeed or get anywhere without the support of a teacher. You know, the teacher's going to have to think about supporting and encouraging and making those women visible everywhere, in every situation. Now, number 2, I need to be able to deal with the fact that male students aren't going to be happy when women do well. Like I said, you know, men expect to do better than women. Men expect to be better than women. They particularly expect to be better than women when it comes to things like martial arts. And if a woman does well, men are just going to complain about it. They're going to be really funny about that woman. And I was in a school for 11 months, and most of the men were okay with me, really, but a significant minority of the men were really funny about me, and they used to say stuff to my teacher about me, and he wasn't really, he was so concerned about what all they thought of him that he didn't really stand up to them when it came to dealing with the fact that I was better than them. There was this one thing where my teacher decided to restrict me to only being allowed to go to 2 specific lessons a week. And I was paying for 2 lessons a week, but normally if you missed a lesson, you were allowed to make it up later. So, if I missed a lesson one week, that meant that really I could go to 3 lessons the following week. Now, the thing is, pretty sure some guy got quite annoyed that I was in lessons 3 lessons in 1 week, and complained to my teacher about it. And instead of my teacher pointing out that I'd missed a lesson the previous week and therefore I was allowed to make it up, I paid for those lessons, so I was allowed to take them, he restricted me to 2 very specific lessons a week. And then obviously, I did miss a lesson every now and again, and that kind of built up to 8 lessons that I missed by the time I stopped going in, and was unable to make up because I wasn't allowed to go to any other lessons. Now, that's not going to encourage women to, if a woman really wants to go to their lessons and use the lessons that they have paid for, that should be allowed, that should be encouraged, that should not be cut down just because some guy can't stand it when he sees some woman being quite keen on actually being in lessons. So you're going to have to think about, and the other thing is, right, you do have to think about this in the long term. So, sure, there were men and women who complained to me about me while I was in lessons, were really funny about me while I was in lessons. But those people, they're not there now. They're not still training, pretty much all of them. Some of them just moved away to a different part of the country. Some of them left because of some other personal thing to do with a teacher. And some of them turned on him subsequently as well. And the thing is, you've got to bear in mind that the short-term gain of keeping some guy quiet because he's a bit annoyed about a woman being in lessons and doing well is not really worth it in the long term, because it's quite likely that those people who are being funny about a woman in lessons with them is going to have other issues going on, isn't going to be loyal to you as a teacher. So, it's better for you as well as for the women, really, to just try and just be firm about encouraging women and allowing women to be in lessons. Now, number 3. Okay, well, unfortunately, you also need to be able to deal with women who are competing with other women for male attention. Unfortunately, I know people like to say this, but there ain't that much of a sisterhood, really, and there certainly isn't when you're in martial arts lessons, because the women are often going there, really, because they want the men. They're after the male attention. I went to a different school. I was sat outside a changing room, and it had it was this building where they had loads of different types of oriental martial arts going on, and I heard this woman in the changing room literally actually saying that she didn't really want more women to go to judo lessons because she was there for the men, and that meant there would be less men for her. And now I'm not against the idea of women going to martial arts lessons to look for a man. I think it's as good a place as any. But if that's the excluding women who actually want to learn, then that is a very serious problem, and you need to think about that as a teacher. You know, if a woman's complaining about another woman, is it because they have a genuine complaint, or is it because they're actually being quite manipulative and wanting the attention themselves and are worried that this other woman is taking the attention? You've really got to think about that. Okay, this kind of leads into my next one, which is you need to be prepared. You need to remember women are there to learn, okay? They're there to learn. They are there as your students. They are not there to admire you. And unfortunately, and they're not there as your kind of property for you to take as you wish. Unfortunately, there's this huge problem with men in martial arts who think that they just own the women who go to them for lessons. That's just kind of the experience that I've had. You know, I mean, this guy I was in lessons with for 11 months, he just assumed that, you know, the women's were there to admire him, and he got very unhappy, he got very annoyed about it if you weren't properly admiring him, and he used to play the women off against each other all the time because he just liked the attention. And that's not encouraging women to actually learn properly, and it actually just causes so much trouble. You know, not just with the women, because it means that men are all assuming that the women are just competing for the attention as well and aren't really there to learn. So, yeah, that's a huge problem. And then I went to this other school, this other class, and the assistant teacher took me aside and taught me for the whole lesson. And the thing was, he repeatedly did this. He was like, okay, stroking up my arms like this, and then going down to the end of my breast like that. And he did it on both sides like that. And he did that repeatedly throughout the lesson. And it's not like we were hid around a corner or anything. And okay, so we weren't being watched by the other people in the lesson. They were all doing their own thing. But they could have looked over and seen what he was doing at any time. And yet he was perfectly comfortable repeatedly doing that. Repeatedly performing an action that resulted in him touching my breasts. That was what he was doing. And yeah, I could have complained about it. But if he was so comfortable doing that in full view of everyone, why would I feel confident that complaining about it was going to get me anywhere or do me any good? So, yeah, I didn't go back. It's rubbish kung fu anyway. I know we're not supposed to say kung fu, but in comparison with Choi Foot, it didn't really do it for me. And then there was this other Tai Chi teacher I went to, and I went there because a friend was really keen for me to go. And he really liked this teacher, really admired him. And then I went along, and this teacher, he was the only teacher for the lesson. He didn't have any other assistant teachers or anything, but he focused on me throughout the lesson and only really dealt with me throughout the lesson, and that was uncomfortable to start with. But he was also always, kept going on about how his, particular Tai Chi style was really authentic and approved by God knows whatever, and how it was all so brilliant. And he, when I said that I had also been to Kung Fu lessons, he started saying things like, oh, well, martial arts teachers, they often send their girlfriends to other lessons to steal their secrets. And it was just like, he was saying stuff like that all the time, and it was very discomforting, and it actually ran over into the next lesson, and it was just so uncomfortable. So I didn't go back to that either. And my friend later said, after I'd voiced, I just said I didn't feel comfortable, and then he was, later on, he said that he noticed that this teacher was rather sleazy with women, and I really don't think that he would have invited me to go along if he thought his teacher was like that before I went along. I think he honestly just never thought about what this man was like with women until I voiced concerns about him. So it's a difficult one. It seems like if it's not very often noticed if a male teacher is funny with women, maybe it's just so much part of the culture, I just don't see it. But really is a problem. So you, as a male martial arts teacher, you really need to think about how you see the women who come to your lessons. Are you seeing them as a student, or are you seeing them as some person that is there for you, for your personal pleasure, for you to admire you or whatever? You've really got to think about how you see the women who come to your lessons. Okay, number 5, final point. You need to be prepared for women facing problems with family and friends outside the lessons. Fact is that you can create a fabulous culture for women inside your studio, your queen, your dojo, whatever, but the problems for women learning kung fu and karate and all the aggressive martial arts, they don't stop at your door, at your studio door, your queen door. They don't stop there. I have had so much trouble with friends and family because I keep learning kung fu. Because what you've got to remember is that when you learn a martial art, you become more confident, you become more capable, it's less easy to manipulate you. And if, people, friends and family, are used to being able to keep you down a bit, or they're not used to you being very confident, they find those kind of changes very difficult to deal with. So they could put quite a lot of pressure on women to just stop going, basically. And I've had that kind of problem. And they could be having problems with their boyfriends or their husbands about it. And you've got to be mindful of that. And okay, you can't expect to live, you can't live their lives around, you can't do this wraparound care for them, but you've really got to be mindful of the fact that women's problems do not stop at the studio door. That's it. The other thing you need to remember is that women, they're not one block. Different women have different problems. A white middle class woman is going to have different things going on from a white working class woman, and a black woman's going to have other problems. Asian women are going to have different problems again. Transgender women are going to have other problems. Lesbian women are going to have different problems. And so when you are seeing a woman in a lesson, you're wondering how to make it comfortable for her, give her the right environment, you're going to have to take into account the fact that they're not all the same. They're all going to have different challenges. People in your other students are going to treat different women differently, and outside of the studio, your school, whatever, they're all going to be treated differently as well. So you're going to have to be mindful of that. Now, I admit this does seem like quite a lot to think about, but we've got decades of martial arts lessons culture to overturn here. I mean, like pretty much all the schools in my area, they're all pretty much dominated by men. It's all kind of cosy white boys clubs, basically, and it's very hard for women to get anywhere while that culture is still prevalent. So this is a whole culture we're talking about, so you're going to have to think about it, I'm afraid, if you really want there to be women martial arts masters. Now I'm going to talk about women teachers. Again, I'm going to have to say this, not much of a sisterhood, I'm afraid, and the fact that women are in the position of being teachers doesn't mean that they're going to be kinder to women. In fact, sometimes it means they'll be more difficult with women. Our first Prime Minister here in the UK was Margaret Thatcher, and she never had a woman in her cabinet. She never promoted a woman to a senior position. So you've got to remember that women aren't necessarily going to be that great with other women, and often women in positions of power are going to be more difficult with women who they feel threaten them, or they feel might be as good as them or even better than them. I don't know what that is. I guess they think that because there are so few women, then space for women is limited, and it doesn't seem to sort of occur to them that maybe space for women could expand, and maybe these good women could be alongside them rather than instead of them. But that's kind of how a lot of women think, unfortunately. So it doesn't mean they're going to promote women, really. And there's often a lot of internalized misogyny. Women quite often really think that women should be less than men, and I like to think I don't have internalized misogyny, but the fact is this stuff is drummed into us from the day we are born. Girl babies are treated differently from boy babies, and it carries on and it carries on, and you get all sorts of subtle little messages all the time. It's constant. So women often take all this stuff on board, and they often believe that women should be less than men. They often don't want to see a woman being as good as a man, because they don't think that's the proper place for women. It's very sad, but that is something that you're also going to have to think about. As a woman, if you're a woman teacher, you're going to have to think, are you really honestly thinking of women as being as good as men? Or are you actually punching down on women and stopping other women from succeeding because you're feeling threatened for whatever reason? There's another thing that I know of 2 women Chorleyfoot teachers. They're not teaching now. One of them was married to my teacher. She was involved with his school. I don't know how much she was involved, but she was involved. And then when she separated from him, she did set up her own school. It was a reasonable distance away from his school, so it's not like she was in competition with him or anything, but it only seems to have lasted about 3 years. I don't know why she gave that up. We're not on good terms. She's not going to tell me, but she didn't seem to be able to sustain it on her own. Maybe, once she left her husband, she realised she wasn't that keen on Kung Fu after all, and she was only doing it because that was what her husband was doing. Maybe she faced a lot of misogyny and difficulty with her male students, or I really don't know. Maybe there just wasn't the demand for Kung Fu in her area. I really have no idea. But she certainly didn't do it for very long, and there was another female Chorleyfoot teacher who was under my teacher, and now he kicked her out while I was there, and he had good reason for doing that. She caused a lot of trouble, but she doesn't seem to have continued training on her own, and she doesn't seem to have set up her own school or do any teach anyone off her own bat for some reason. I don't know why. But it sort of seems a bit like women don't feel like they can do these things unless they've got a man to guide them or something. I don't know. It's troubling, but that's kind of how it is. And I don't know of any other female Kung Fu or karate teachers in the area. They might do Tai Chi or yoga or Qigong, but they don't do the more aggressive ones, which is really sad.